This is my second open letter to Mr. Bill Maher. I just made my first open letter with regards to why these foreign nations, at least members of the empire, um, Uncle Sam's empire, at least why they don't have representation in the House of Representatives. And I asked you why you don't have anybody in your show ever with an accent who doesn't agree with you. If you ever bring them, I miss those shows and I watch your show often. So you never have, proportionally, you never have anybody who with an accent from those shitholes of the world that you disagree with, because I guess if you disagree with them, they must be wrong because you're always right. So that's a white supremacy thing, that I'm always right. That's a human thing. I'm always right, everybody's wrong. Although I say it often that I may be wrong, I hope other people do too. Here is the thing. Because none of us ever have a full story. We all see life from our perspective, and our perspective depends on how much we have seen in life, Mr. Bilmo. I've noticed that you have seen a lot of America. You have seen too much of Los Angeles and Las Vegas, but you have seen somewhat of other places in Uncle Sam's land, and good for you. Uh, but I've noticed that you lack an international perspective, and one of the reasons I could point out that probably because you haven't traveled internationally a lot. And why would you? You know, they don't know you abroad that much. You don't make that much money abroad if you go there, and having to speak, understand a different language, and all of that. That's too much hassle. If I have, Bill Maher kind of money, I wouldn't want to move from my bed either. But, you know, the point is this. If I had Bill Maher's money, I probably would move less than Bill Maher. But that's the thing, Mr. Bill Maher. This love of comfort has made you turned you into a white supremacist. This this seeking of comfort has made you into a white supremacist, although you don't see it that way, because you haven't left the white lands forever. Very rarely have you stepped out of the white lands. And when you don't step out of your small square, then whatever views you have is not what you have seen. Those views, those perspectives that I just talked about, we all have a perspective. We have a perspective mostly based on what we have seen. But most of your perspective, most of your perspective as Mr. Bilmar comes from what you have seen inside America. But your international perspective, Mr. Bilmar, comes from solely from what you have heard or read. I have news for you that what you hear and what you read is not very dependable. There are many proverbs in many languages that says, you know, this disparages hearing and encourages seeing. There are many proverbs in many languages. That seeing is very important, not hearing about it. You have been told, but you haven't seen it. Maybe they are shed hole in one as perspective, as you so frankly put it in this week's uh, new rules. In this week's new rules, you disparage the whole fucking planet. It's sort of like no, everywhere else is a shed hole, and and if that wasn't the case, all these celebrities would have moved there. because they said if Trump was elected they would move, but they didn't. So obviously those shitholes must be really bad. Well, no, actually, you know that is somewhat the case, because when you burn down everybody else's house in the neighborhood, by comparison, your house, however bad, uh, is a castle. If you burn down everybody's neighborhood houses in the neighborhood, your house becomes a castle, because it's the only fucking house with a roof on it. So yeah, that's one case with regards to from Vietnam to Iraq to Libya to Nigeria to the whole fucking Africa was colonized for 500 years by Europeans, white people, you folks, Mr. Bilmar. And Asia, they're still trying to do colonization in West Asia. They stopped doing colonization in East Asia because China got too strong. But now they're continuing anywhere there is a weakness. White people start to colonize that area on planet Earth. Anywhere they find weakness, everybody has to be armed all the time to the teeth, or else white people are going to come after you. This is the idea behind colonization on planet Earth for the last 500 years, 1,000 years. White people got their hands on some strong ships and some strong arms, and they're going to come after you if you're not if you're if you're not paying attention. First you disarm Iraq and then you rape them. It's the same story all over the world. Anybody who shows any kind of weakness, white people jump. I'm sorry, this is history. So here's the point. Yeah, there are skirmishes. Here's the thing, folks. Yes, if you leave them around, they will continue fighting, but they will fight in their fucking neighborhood. Especially if you don't arm them from a distance, their fight will be very localized and will go away soon. Especially if it's not funded or armed from outside. If local wars are not supplied with arms and funding from outside, those local wars soon they run out of resources and the war stops. The only the wars go on and on because they're funded from outside. Because somebody's got a fish in this, wants to fish in this muddy water, so they muddy the water more, because there's some good fish will come out of muddy water, because the fish don't know where the fuck they're going when they can't see. So 500,000 Ukrainians are dead. There were fish in the muddy waters. They don't know where the fuck they're going. Anyway, but this muddy water is benefiting somebody, Raytheon and all of that. But the point is this, Mr. Bill Maher, if you haven't seen those shitholes in the world, you're only basing your perspective with regards to international matters on what you have been told. That's not dependable. You can't have a correct perspective based on what you have been told. By a written material or by spoken material, you have been told about a lot of these shitholes in the world. How can your perspective be anything close to reality if it comes from all that you have been told but not seen? You can't be anywhere near close to reality. It's the whole the joke about, there's a proverb, a joke about an elephant in a room with in the dark room. There's an elephant, and there are five guys who are in this dark room. They have been given the task of determining what the fuck this thing is that's in the room with them, and they each touch, because it's dark, they can't see. They each touch one part of the elephant, and the one who touches the tail says it's a broom. That one who touches the leg says it's a pillar, and the one touches the nose who says it's a hose. So And the ears are, curtains and all of that. The point is this: if you haven't seen it, if you haven't been there, if you haven't lived there, what do you know? You have been told by people who in the dark room have touched something, they have told you. And now you know what the fuck is in the room? Although you haven't been even in the room, you haven't touched it personally. Here's the thing, Mr. Bill Moore. If you haven't been there, don't talk about it. I saw your show and uh, this your last piece about new rules, about how bad those places are, and as evidence of those other places that are bad, as evidence for that, as proof of that, you say, yes, proof is these celebrities didn't go over there when they said they will go if Trump is elected. Well, they didn't go over there because if I'm a millionaire leaving the luxury of their own bed, why? Millionaires usually, if they're multimillionaire, billionaires, they really don't want to leave their circle of competence. That's where they live, the area they know, the restaurants, the people. Why would they want to live? In fact, so rich people are the last people that want to leave any country unless it becomes, civil war. When the country falls into civil war, that's when the rich people leave first, but not before that. You have to, they have to be uncomfortable. And as long as they have their restaurants and salons and this and that to go to and enjoy life, why would they want to leave? The poor people, on the other hand, they leave all the time. I mean, you know how many retired Americans are living in Mexico? A lot. We're talking about a couple of million. You know how many young Americans leave for Europe and Asia just because, they have some kind of services that they can provide over there, and they see that the income they make with the life that they live, they will have some kind of free time on their hand to live actually. A lot of Americans who are living in Bali and living in Nigeria, they see it's like your income is less, but your expenses are also less. That means you have a few hours in a day that you can spend doing what you enjoy to do, as opposed to with the hundreds of thousands of student loans, trying to pay back the student loans with 750 an hour. Do you see where I'm going with this? So this idea that you disparage everywhere else, here's the thing. There may be a shithole in one aspect. Maybe they're not a shithole in a different aspect. You even disparaged an Italian country living on your show. As in, like, yes, you want to go and buy an Italian house in an Italian village for $1? Yes, of course. Why not? If your work is by the internet, if you make your living on the internet as a, and you don't have to be present in an office-like environment, why not go and live in some rural village in Rome, in Italy? Why not? I mean, here's the thing, Mr. Bill Maher. You can spread all this good things about American culture much better through tourists who go abroad and live for, not like tourists for 5 days or 2 weeks, which very few Americans do, but with people who actually, they say, oh, yeah, I want to go and live in Italy and buy that house for $1 and fix it up and live there. Maybe they do. Maybe they return after 6 months. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Maybe they return after 3 months. Maybe they return after 6 months, or maybe they return after 6 years. But if you want to spread your culture of tolerance, the best way to do it is through these people who want to go over there and live over there in another place outside of America, In this way, you can spread your message much better than you can with soldiers. It's simple. If you have Americans living abroad, you can spread your message much better. If your message is better and has a better acceptance in the marketplace of messages, your message would be much more pleasing to the local shit heads of those shitholes if it comes with a woman or a man who has moved to their neighborhood from Los Angeles to, you know, Piccini in Italy, village of Piccini in Italy. This guy from Los Angeles in that village, it will bring your message of tolerance and freedom and whatever other messages that you think you have for the world that is good for the world. He will bring it much better in a much present fashion to the locals than your soldier would, than your military base would. If the idea is to spread the message and not make Raytheon rich. Here's the thing, Mr. Bill Maher. Those shitholes in the world, when I say you have to have different perspectives, this is what I mean. Those shitholes in the world that in your view they're shitholes because they don't have indoor plumbing. Yes, but from aspect they're worse, in some aspect they're worse, in some aspect they're better. You don't know that until you go over there. If you feel, you know, I mean, Gore, remember Gore Vidal? He literally went and lived for a considerable portion of his life when he could afford it. He left United States and went and lived on top of fucking hill in Italy. And he was happy because he never left there. After he went to Italy, he rarely visited Uncle Sam's land. So please don't tell me that, and Gore Vidal was no dummy. I mean, he was in the fucking White House with his family who were connected to the White House. So Gore Vidal was not a dummy. So yes, probably you know, his house in Italy maybe didn't have central air conditioning. But the area obviously has had some other appeal that made him stay most of his, adult life there. A large portion of his adult life there. So, but you haven't been there. Nope. Bill Maher knows Las Vegas and knows Los Angeles. And his perspective comes from what he's been told about those other shitholes. If you have spent any time abroad, I'm thinking it's been measured within days or weeks. No. Why don't you go abroad and measure your stay abroad in months and years, and then come back and say you still have the same perspective with regards to those shitholes? Again, Uncle Sam's land is great. We love Uncle Sam. But one reason it seems very great is that many neighborhoods have been burnt down by Uncle Sam's managers. Many neighborhoods on this planet have been burned down. Neighborhood of East Asia, neighborhood of West Asia, neighborhood of South Africa, and the neighborhood of Australia. A lot of these neighborhoods around the world have been burnt down, but by white people, mostly by the Anglo-Saxon consortium, which has manifested in Uncle Sam's land, which has remanifested in NATO. A lot of these neighborhoods on the planet, which is basically it's a white club, white man's club. Yes, they have some black and brown people running around and doing shit for them, and killing people for them, but that it's the white man's club, NATO. So basically, by burning down those neighborhoods, yeah, in comparison, it's the Western Hemisphere seems, in general, Western Hemisphere is great because you burn down everywhere else. White man's land seems very great because other man's land has been burnt down. That's one way, or one reason. But and the other reason is basically, having all the brains from around the world gathered in one land. That's makes the land very fertile, very good, very great, and good for you. Good for anybody who lives in Uncle Sam's land, and we all appreciate it. But remember, I mean, stop burning other neighborhoods down for one thing on this planet, and stop being so, disparaging towards other places. They may not have indoor plumbing, but they probably have, most likely, they have other aspects which more than makes up for their shortcomings. Other amenities which more than makes up for their shortcomings. Start traveling, Mr. Bilmore. Start traveling, please. And measure your travels, stays abroad in months, not days, at least. Especially to those shitholes. Salute.